It's the Elsa Kurt Show, conservative views on world news. Brought to you by The Wellness Company. Prepare for the unexpected. And now, it's time for the show.
Well, hello, my friends. We are here today, not with Clay. I know you're looking at this guy next to me going, that's not Clay. No, this is my new great friend. I'm so thrilled to have met this guy. This is Mark Deluzio. We are hanging out together today, and we have so much to talk about. It's not that I have so much to talk about. It's so much that I want to listen to you talk about. So welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Elsa. I really appreciate it. This is great.
Absolutely. So Mark was so kind to reach out to me a few weeks ago, I think it was. And we've been having these wonderful exchanges back and forth, and come to find out he is originally local to where I'm at. I'm not telling you people where I am. Please, come on now. But we are New Englanders. Were you born and raised in New England, or did you end up in New England?
No, I'm born and raised.
You were? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we are fellow New Englanders. You have since gone for sunnier, warmer, better locations. I cannot wait to follow suit. But I want to talk about your story, because your story is really fascinating and incredible, and the things that you do. So let's give everybody, if you don't mind, give everybody a little bit of background about who you are.
Sure. By the way, I'm not old enough to have voted for Lincoln. Okay, just to let you know.
Okay.
I knew him, but I wasn't old enough to vote at the time. Okay, so, but anyway, yeah, I came from a working class, lower, middle class family. My father was a tool and die guy for 44 years. Never missed a day of work in his life, except for when he fought in World War II. He fought at the Battle of Iwo Jima, and taught me my work ethic. So, at 10 years old, I was shoveling driveways, and in New England, I was cutting lawns and stealing my mother's lemonade to go sell to the construction workers for a nickel, and they would give us a quarter, and we thought we could have retired back then. And then I was the first one to go to college in my family, and put my way through college working at United Parcel Service at 5 a.m, and then going to school in the afternoon. And I ended up with 2 college degrees, undergrad degrees in business, and then I have an MBA. And long story short, I started out in the finance world and came up through the ranks and became a corporate officer. And I got involved in manufacturing, and was lucky enough to be at the forefront of the lean manufacturing movement in the United States by a company called Danaher, which I became a corporate officer for, and developed what we now call the Danaher Business System, which is world renowned. They teach it at Harvard, and I get calls all the time, all around the world, on DBS, on the Danaher Business System, and all these CEOs want to implement it, and I tell them they can't, unless you go work for Danaher.
It's a no.
They got to do their own. They got to do their own thing. But anyway, that's my back. I have a consulting company, Elsa. I started in 2001, right before 9/11. What a great timing that was! Wow. But it didn't really hurt me. And I've been consulting globally. I have a global team. We're in Australia. I've been to India 4 times last year. I was 550 meters underground in a copper mine in Australia last year. Wow. We're going to be working in South Africa, Norway, the biggest fishery company. They provide the world's 50% of the world's salmon supply. And we worked in all kinds of different industries: logging, fracking, oil and gas, insurance, and doing all kinds of things. So I've been doing that. I love doing it because I love teaching. I had just celebrated my 44th anniversary to my wife, Diane, who she's probably the luckiest girl on the planet,
So you tell her every day, right?
Yes, and I really know her eye rolls, so don't worry. Well, we actually met when we were 19. My very best friend since 4 years old, he's still my best friend, introduced me. He had me go to this work party, and I didn't want to go. He called me 3 times, Elsa, and I finally went. And when I walked in the house, I saw my wife sitting on the couch, and I said to my friend Frank, I said, "Frank, I'm going to marry her." Right? Wow. I just knew it. Now, it took her a little while longer to figure that out.
It wasn't as instantaneous for her.
No, it wasn't. But but we hit it off, and we dated the next weekend, and then that was the whole thing, right? So we've been married for 44 years. We have 2 boys. Both went to become degreed accountants like their father. It's one of my degrees anyway. and worked for CPA firms, and they left CPA firms to go fight in the Middle East, in Afghanistan, and they wanted to join the infantry. They did not want to become commissioned officers, and they wanted to be what's called NCO, non-commissioned officers, and they wanted to fight in the infantry. Okay, which is like, well, why'd they pick the infantry? That's what they wanted to do. And my younger guy, Steven, at the age of 25, got killed over there. So we became Gold Star parents. Scott was there at the same time. They sent him home. And he, matter of fact, I have to send you his book, Elsa. He wrote a book called Surviving Son.
Please
so
do.
I'll get that over to you. Yep.
We'll put a link in the notes for the for that too. So people
it's on Amazon. And he also has a podcast called Drive On Podcast, which is dedicated to helping military people transition. And he's very well rated globally on that. Nice. I think he told me he's in the top 5%. But he runs that as well. And so we lost Stephen in 2010. He was scheduled to be married to his high school sweetheart when he got back. And of course, we had to change all those plans, and that didn't happen. But in 2010, I think you probably know who was president back then. It was Obama. We never got a phone call. We got a form letter with a computer-generated signature because we compared it with other Gold Star parents. And this was totally ignored. Right now, you got to remember, the terror of Ferguson, Michael Brown's mother, got a call.
Right.
And matter of fact, Obama says that if I had a son, that's the model I would want, a guy like Michael Brown, who took the gun from the cop, got killed in the process of doing so, and just minutes earlier accosted a lady in a convenience store. So that's the model that Obama wants. But we didn't get a call. In 2019, we got a call from the White House. I thought it was a prank call, And they said the president and first lady would like to honor you, your son, Stephen, who's the one that was killed, and your family at the White House. And he had a ceremony with other Gold Star parents. He and Melania spent 3 hours with us. I'll tell you right now, anybody who tells me he does not respect the military, you're going to have to go a long way to convince me. Because he is an unbelievable, passionate person. We saw another side of him. Of course, the press makes him out to be a tyrant and all that.
Right.
That's not him. He does things that nobody reports. Matter of fact, he did this every year, Elsa, when he was president, and he never publicized it. There was no press about it. Nobody knew about it. Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
He's he pulled out the stops. Let me tell you, he had the military, the Marine Chamber Band, the president's band playing. They had a harpsichord. They had a lady playing a harp. People serving us drinks and champagne. He had a great spread of food. He had dignitaries there from every branch. He had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs there. Pence was there. We don't talk about him. And he had all the top branch guys from the top brass from the military there. And he had this unbelievable ceremony for us. And we had the run of the White House, the East Wing. They didn't kick us out afterwards. We were there for over an hour and a half, and nobody was telling us to leave, right? And the night before, we had a chance to go visit the West Wing. We got a tour of that.
Wow.
And they so we got to see the Oval Office and all that. It's smaller than you think it is if you ever saw it.
Really? Is it?
Yeah, it looks bigger on TV. But it was funny because they had on that one there, they had like one of those velvet ropes across the door, so we couldn't go in.
Okay.
So two funny things happened. My son and I put our foot in the Oval Office, and my wife Diane said, "What are you guys doing?" Well, we want to be able to say we were in the Oval Office,
Heck yeah.
So she just shakes her head, Then I'm looking to the far right. I'm sticking my head in, and I'm looking over to the right. And Diane says to me, Mark, what are you doing? I said, I want to see the Lewinsky room. I said, that's the most famous room in the world. Forget the Oval Office, right?
Yes,
true. I want to
true.
see and she goes, you're an idiot. She says to me, you're an idiot. You're an idiot.
As only a wife would say, right?
Right. Because I told her that a lot of stuff went down in there,
Yes.
literally.
Literally.
So anyway, and I'll tell you right now, and when General Kelly came out, and I'm good friends with Sheriff Joe Arpaio, very good friends with him. He called me and said, because he loves President Trump. The first pardon he made was for Sheriff Joe on that Obama thing and the birth certificate thing, which Sheriff Joe showed me the whole thing and how his certificate is a fraud. Okay.
Wow.
And all Sheriff Joe said is show us the real one. That's all he wanted to do. He wasn't about to say where Obama was born or question where he was born. He just said, show me the birth certificate. And Obama never produced it. And I won't get into the details of what he showed me, but it's clear that he was not born in that hospital on the day they said he was born, okay, in Hawaii.
Wow.
It's unbelievably clear. But anyway, so Sheriff Joe calls me and says, Mark, General Kelly is really dissing President Trump. I want you to write a letter to me asking me to ask President Trump in support of, and talk about your Gold Star experience with him and going to the White House. And I put the picture in the letter and all that. And I'll send you the letter. So he sent it to Trump's assistant, and she posted it on Truth. And President Trump actually texted me and thanked me for doing that. And the thing that people understand with General Kelly, by the way, is General Kelly was his chief of staff, and Trump fired him. Then General Kelly started talking about the mean thing he said about John McCain, which, I agree it was a dumb thing to say, and there's no upside to saying it, but he said it.
Right.
And also the scuffle he had with the Muslim Gold Star father. So Kelly was using that as an example of how Trump just hates the military. Well, I did a little investigation and found out that those events happened a year and 2 years before he took the job with Trump.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting? Okay.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Now Kelly is General Kelly is a Gold Star father as well, right?
Yep.
But somebody got to him and paid him or something. I don't know what. Maybe he had a grudge against Trump for firing him. I don't know. But I did a little investigation. So, wait a minute, how does the guy take a job with such a tyrant that hates the military? Okay.
Right.
If that happened a year and 2 years before. See,
and that's such a common story. It's such a common story throughout Trump's first presidency. That so many people who, loved him are on record, on video, on, just everywhere talking about how great he is and how much they love him and how much he's done for them and how much they appreciate him. And the minute it was clear that he was running for president, they all started turning on him. And that's the irony to me. How many of these people loved him so much before that and then completely turned on him? It's just, and there's proof. There's so much proof, but then there's so many people, all of the orange man bad, mean tweets, blah, blah, blah. All of these people, either genuinely don't know or they've selectively forgotten all of these actual truths and not the ones that the mainstream media and the left-wing politicians want you to believe of him. And I so love that you shared that story of your experience with him because there's so many stories like that of his kindness and his generosity and his true, genuine patriotism. And, the one thing that we collectively know as people who actually do support him, and by the way, not blindly support him, we have no problem pointing out any of his, failings or inadequacies or mistakes or anything. We're not blind followers as they like to, portray anyone who supports Trump. But we also know, truth from fiction. And, the truth is he is not the guy that they portray him to be. So
absolutely not. Absolutely not. And, the other thing too, that when we met him, he walked over to my wife and gave her a big hug. Right. And he looked up to the sky, pointed up and said, Stephen's looking down on you guys. Yep. Not that he knew Stephen, and they told him what the name was, right? But he took that kind of,
Yes.
And and I told Diane, I said, Diane, we've been married at that time was whatever it was, 39 years, whatever. I said, I would never leave you for another woman. I said, except Melania.
Listen, that woman is so beautiful.
And my wife said to me, well, she said, you couldn't afford to buy her lunch.
I like your wife. And by the way, you got me all teary here. I can't wait to meet your wife. I think we're going to get along swimmingly.
I don't want you to meet her.
Oh, yeah. You're in trouble.
Well, when I come up your way, because we grew up pretty close to each other.
Yeah.
We got to do dinner, and we'll definitely do that. But yeah. And I already know the place. But
got the place picked out.
No. So so when you really look at what's going on here, going into the political thing, and I have a podcast that you're going to be on.
Yeah,
it's a
I can't wait. Tell everybody the name. Tell everybody the name of the podcast, please.
It's called Constitution Solution: One Podcast Under God, and you can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Rumble. We haven't been kicked off of YouTube yet. But I had Ted Nugent on a few weeks ago. He's a friend of mine, a big patriot. And I had Sheriff Joe on. I'm going to be having Floyd Brown on coming up, who is the guy that kind of put together Citizens United and also the Worley Horton thing against Dukakis. And he's the chairman of Kerry Lake's campaign. And so I got to meet and know him because I am helping Kerry Lake with policy and stuff like that. So her and I are friends, and we're helping Kerry. I was just at her victory party the other night. And we have all these people on that are patriots, that have a point of view about our country, like you do. And so the whole intent of the podcast, and by the way, the website for that podcast is called 1787solution.com, and that's the year that we founded the Constitution, or ratified it. And we really think that people don't know the Constitution.
It's true.
They think it's an outdated document. I had a liberal tell me once. She told me, a college kid, she said, "That's an old document. That's an old document. That's outdated." I go, "Yeah. Well, what about the Bible?"
Right. They'll call that outdated too. They call that fiction, right? Don't they call that a book of fakes?
What people don't understand is the Marxist agenda that's being inflicted on us, because we're too busy fighting all the different infractions, like was transgenders, taking down the family, taking away your God, the economy, the race baiters out there that want to divide us with income disparity, gender disparity. I mean, all these things that are being launched out there are intending to divide us. Exactly what Stalin did when he killed 100 million people, which we never learned about in school.
Right. That's absolutely true.
Yeah. I mean, we learned that Stalin was our ally, but never did he kill more. He killed far more people than Hitler did. And I'm not trying to say what Hitler did was right. It wasn't, of course. But we learned
it's
about
not
Hitler.
To minimize Hitler. It's to acknowledge that he's not the only one. Right.
No, exactly right. Exactly right. And so, we're the Marxist agenda that's being inflicted on us. So we're trying to teach people about that and what our rights are per the Constitution. The more, I know it pretty well, but let me tell you something else. Every time I get into a particular episode that we do, whether it be on executive orders, whether it be on any one of the amendments, I am astonished how brilliant our founders were.
Yeah.
It blows me away. Okay. Now, the
foresight that they had, right, is unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. And by the way, they argued too. It's like today, they had debates. You had the Hamiltons, you had the Adams were the big government guys that wanted a bigger, expansive government. You had Jefferson and Madison and people like that were for limited government. And thank God they ended up winning that fight. It divided Adams and Jefferson all their lives. Matter of fact, especially when Jefferson beat John Quincy, the son of John Adams, for president, because he was a big government guy too. And it divided them for their whole lives. They were very good friends when this whole thing started. And they died on the same day, 50 years to the day, on July 4th, 1826. They both died on the same day. Okay. Wow. Adams and Jefferson. But Jefferson was off the charts brilliant. If I had three people I wanted to meet and go back and meet, people ask that question, right? It would be Thomas Jefferson, it would be Margaret Thatcher, and it would be Jesus, of course. Yeah. Margaret Thatcher. Jesus Christ. Oh, he'd be the first one. Of course.
Yeah. He's the third, but he's the number one. I gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't put him in order.
I knew what you meant. Yeah.
But Jefferson and Margaret Thatcher was like, my God, what she did, and excuse my language, but the balls she had against all these men and she didn't give a damn. She just said, here's what it is. Here's what I think. Don't like it. Tough. Take a hike. And she was able to talk about it wasn't a glass ceiling at that time. It was a steel ceiling that she broke through.
Sure.
I was so fascinated with her, She
was a league of her own, right? Did you happen to see, there was a movie on her life. Did you happen to see it? I have not seen it.
Yeah, it's called The Iron Lady. Iron Lady. Yeah.
How did they do?
Oh, phenomenal.
I know the acting was great. I know that much because I know who the actress is.
Yeah, you need to watch that one sometime because it just tells you who she was, and boy, I give her all kinds of credit. And Thomas Jefferson, they say that when Washington's cabinet was assembled, with Adams and Hamilton and John Jay and all these other and Jefferson, it was the most condensed intellect and intelligence on the planet at that time,
Wow.
except for when Thomas Jefferson was by himself. You know, I mean, that's
Yeah.
off the chart. And if you read Madison wrote the Constitution,
Mm-hmm.
Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, and when you read that, I mean, it's a piece of it's an art. It's art. The way he used the words, and my God.
I'm curious, when have you always had this interest in the Constitution specifically, or did this come about because of everything going on? Like, have you always had this passion for it?
Yes, maybe not to the level I'm doing now, but I always
Mm-hmm.
did.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've always done, I was always able to see patterns and the
Mm.
big picture as to what's going on. And it was so good to hear President Trump the other day talk about the Marxist agenda.
Yes.
We got to use that word more often. One of my episodes, a couple of my episodes on my podcast, one is about globalism and Marxism. Okay, and I take the Communist Manifesto, and I will detail for you point by point in that episode how our government is implementing the Communist Manifesto. Okay, and I also, for each one, talk about the biblical conflict for each one of those. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, another one I got one on the military-industrial complex,
Mm-hmm.
and by the way, thank you for reminding me because I want to get back to Trump on this one.
Yeah.
And the other one I did was Robert Welch Wright. Now, who was Robert Welch? He was the founder of the John Birch Society,
Mm-hmm.
and which I'm a life member of. And the John Birch Society was ostracized by the left as being a bunch of wackos and conspiracy theorists and all that, racist and all that, right? All the normal stuff. All the favorite stuff, yeah. And so Robert Welch was the founder of that, and he wrote this thing called the Blue Book. He had a meeting in Indiana, and that's when the John Birch Society was founded. John Birch was a missionary in China who got killed by the communists. It's a long story, but that's who they named it after.
Okay.
And he wrote this thing called the Blue Book, which is basically the document he read at that meeting, for the 2-day meeting he had with all these top influential people. And the Blue Book, I went through the Blue Book, and in that book, he talked about the communist overthrow of our country way back in 1958.
Wow.
You know, and I went
1958
through.
goes back to.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And so I went through that book, Elsa, and I highlighted all of his predictions or statements about what was going on. And there were 15 that I highlighted, and there were 15. 100, he's batting 1,000. Everything he predicted. Now, Robert Welch is off the charts genius as well. He started a candy company. What were the candies that he had? Junior Mints and Sugar Daddy, I think. But he made all his money from that. He graduated college at the age of 15 or something. He was off the charts brilliant, right?
Yeah.
But he was able to see patterns, okay, and connect the dots, right? And he ended up forming John Birch Society. Now, at a similar time, Senator McCarthy came out and started accusing everybody of being communist. And he was a little callous as to how he went about and did it. And unfortunately, he opened himself for a lot of criticism as a nut job. But McCarthy, and I may do an episode on that, was correct as well about his assertions. Okay. But again, it's easy to demonize. Whenever you see something like the election here in Arizona, where I live, when the audit got done, and I spent 6 hours studying that audit, it was poorly done in terms of how they reported it. But with my data background, I was able to make heads or tails about it. There was definitely irregularities, big time irregularities. Okay.
Right.
And you got to remember, Maricopa is bigger than county, which I live in, is bigger than 23 states in the U.S.
Wow.
Okay. Population wise and all that. So what the press did was they criticized the auditors. They didn't criticize the findings. That's a very typical liberal approach where they'll attack the person to deflect from the subject at hand. And that's exactly what they did. Well, it's the same thing with Robert Welch and the same thing with McCarthy. Okay. And I'll tell you right now, it's so unbelievably scary how right he was.
It's
about
very
this.
scary. Yeah.
So there is a globalist overthrow with the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, all these yo-yos that are trying to run this thing. And I tell people, socialism is just a JV team for communism. So you Bernie Sanders fans out there. And number two is there will be winners in communism. It just won't be you.
Right. Absolutely. That's so true.
Yeah.
You know what gets me about everything that you're saying? Like, I literally, and I'm not putting myself down by any means, but I literally only have a fraction of the knowledge that you have on these topics, like a fraction. And I can see what's happening. You know what I mean? So that's how, and that's not no credit to me. That's simply how blatant they are now. They're not hiding any of what they're doing.
No.
So
No,
that's what really honestly gets me the most right now, that all of the people, we've been saying these things for a while now, for several years at least, just, general groups of us, groups like you who know a lot more, have been saying this for a lot longer. We caught on a little bit, people like me caught on, a little late in the game, but now we're trying to get other people to see what's really happening here. And so that's what gets me. How is it that only some people can see what's right in front of your face, what's playing out in real time, what they're coming right out and saying, like there's no hiding it, and yet we still have a really frighteningly large part of our population that's sitting here going, yay, free college, free everything, yay. It's terrifying, really. And kind of what I want to ask you is, are we going to be able to turn this around? Are we too far gone down this path? Obviously to me, Trump is a huge hope in turning that around, but my goodness, if he had an uphill battle the first time around, it's twice as high this time that he's got to fight up. So what do you see happening, if you can even project?
Well, it's interesting you asked that, because again, I do want to bring this around to Trump again, because one of the reasons they're going after him is because he is fighting the globalists. He pulled out of the Paris Accords, he pulled out of the WHO. I think that if he had become president, which I do believe he won the election, but last time, he would have pulled out of the UN, which we really do need to do. Okay. All the countries, many of the countries in the UN right now are against their own UN doctrine, about peace and all that stuff. So I really believe he would have done that, and that I would applaud that if he would. These globalists, and many of them besides just the UN, it all started to go back to Woodrow Wilson. I call him Woody because I have trouble saying his first name. And we do 2 episodes on that. Suzette Lawrence and I, who's my partner, you'll meet when you come on our show, did 2 episodes on Woody Wilson, and he was put in there as a stooge by the industrialists back then. The J.P. Morgans and people like that, they were all globalists and all anti-Semites. Okay, and they actually put him in, and he started this 1913. I have an episode on this. Was the worst year in our history, in my opinion. Okay, that year is the year that Woody was elected, number one. Who actually came out and said that the checks and balances of our Constitution are a theory. Okay, no, it's the law. It's the law. Okay. 2, he started the first agency, the Federal Trade Commission, and at that time he signed into law the 16th Amendment was our income tax, the right to tax income, and there's something about that people don't get, and I'll talk about it in a minute. And in that year, we also established the Federal Reserve, which to me is the reason. And if you understand how it works, there's no incentive for the Federal Reserve to do what their charter is, which is to keep the economy stable. Absolutely zero incentive to do that. Okay, and as you can see, every single economic calamity, including the one that we're going to be going into next, because we will, and it will happen on Trump's watch if he wins, and they'll blame him for it. Right. But is all because of the Fed. Okay. So those are the things that happened in 1913, and also the 17th Amendment, which was taking away the state legislators' right to appoint senators. Now they're voted in. Okay. And that's a big deal too. There's more to that. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but the 16th Amendment, what was wrong about that? Because, and by the way, people back then wanted it, Elsa. They wanted it because they used, believe it or not, this line called the rich people have to pay their fair share. Now
they still use that. They still use it.
Now, what happened in the 16th Amendment, though, wasn't the fact as bad that they could tax your income. They took away the provision in the Constitution, which is in Article 1, Section 8, I believe, where Congress has the right to tax, but the taxes have to come from the states proportionately based on population. So let's just say, Iowa represents 7% of the states of the country's population. 7% of the federal taxes come from Iowa. That was blown away in the 16th Amendment, which gave way to the graduated income tax. the more you make, the more you pay.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, that is one of the 10 tenets of the Marxist agenda. Okay.
Wow.
So there you go. All right. So
Wow.
people
I hope you're all taking notes. I hope everybody's taking notes, because when I watch it back, I'll be taking notes. And I'm also, and again, guys, I will link your show as well as your sons in the book. All of the links for everything will be in the show's notes, so you'll be able to click right on it. And I'm so excited. You know, I told you this in our casual conversation a couple weeks ago, that I was a delinquent in high school. I was not a very good student. In fact, I was.
So was I. So was I.
Good. Okay, it makes me feel a little bit better. And I was actually kicked out of my history class because I talked too much. I know everybody's shocked by that, but it's true. What a surprise that I was kicked out of class for talking too much. I was kicked out of many classes for talking too much. Never mind all of that. My point being is that in this stage of my life, and I'm fine with it because I love learning. But in this stage of my life, I feel like I'm in the world's biggest game of catch up, like catching up on all of these things. And I am so excited. I'm talking like Kamala with my hands like this. Sorry, I just caught myself. I'm so excited to watch your program because there's so much that I'm going to get from it. And anyone who's in the same boat or needs a refresher or just simply loves continuous learning, this is stuff, like you said early on, this is so imperative that we know our history, that we know our Constitution, that we know what's happening right now in our world. Because if you live in this, bubble of oblivion, which I was notorious for once upon a time, you're complicit in the downfall of our country. You bet. And I hate to be dire, but it really is that dire, I believe.
Yeah. Well, and again, I keep saying I want to loop this back to President Trump. Yeah. So what he did in fighting all of this, he called it the swamp. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's why they're going after him.
Yes.
Okay. They're going after him because of his attack on globalism, the military-industrial complex. He did not start a war, which, by the way, is if you go back and really try to understand why Kennedy got killed, he wanted to pull out of Vietnam. Okay. And that was orchestrated from that. Also, the Bay of Pigs and CIA has something to do with it, but and maybe the mafia, but he got taken out by our own government. Yeah. Okay. And none of these assassinations, whether it be Martin Luther King or RFK or President Trump or Ronald Reagan,
right?
These guys, they say, "Oh, he acted alone." First thing the press says, "Oh, he acted alone." No, nobody. No. I'm sorry, they don't act alone, and we may never find out what's behind President Trump's attempted assassination. But I will never be convinced he acted alone. They're going after President Trump because he's taking money out of the piggy bank. And the military-industrial complex, which Eisenhower warned us about in his farewell speech before he left office over 60 years ago. In his speech, Elsa, it said the military-industrial congressional complex. He took the word congressional out at the last minute. Okay. And the only people I hear talk about the military-industrial complex for the most part are President Trump and Tulsi Gabbard. Okay. And she's got a lot of guts to talk about it, right? But I don't agree with a lot of her social issues, but she does have a lot of good things to say about that. She left the Democratic Party and all that.
Right.
But anyway, that's why they're going after President Trump. Okay. Yeah. So we're trying to educate people because one of the tenets is to not want to say dumb down, but control the education system.
Yes.
We're not teaching kids, of course, how to think. We're teaching them what to think, right?
Absolutely.
And this college kid I had dinner with one night, she knew I ran for U.S. Congress. I didn't talk about that. And I'm an Adam Smith economist, like Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell and Walter E. Williams, all those guys. They're my heroes in terms of economics. Art Laffer, she's a Keynesian, which basically says, the government's going to stimulate the economy by infusing money into the economy. Well, where do they get the money from? The Fed either creates it out of air, which is the definition of inflation, by the way. The expansion of the money supply is why we have inflation. That is inflation. The result is we have higher prices because you got dollars that are worth anything that you have more of is worth less. Okay. Right. And I use that example with baseball cards with my grandson.
That's a perfect example. Yeah.
Yeah. If there's one Mickey Mantle baseball card in the world versus a million, what do you think would be worth more? At 10 years old, he said, "Well, Poppy, if there's only one, it would be worth $1 gazillion." He gets it.
He's following him in his poppy's footsteps, I think.
Well, how does a 10-year-old kid get it, and AOC, who has an economics degree, doesn't get it, right?
Right.
Well, maybe they do get it. See, that's the other issue here, right?
Yes.
They think all of this stuff is by incompetence. It is not.
Mm-hmm.
They are very competent in terms of what they're doing to our country.
Right. That's the biggest mistake, right? Underestimating their intelligence, really.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And they're better at it, quite frankly, than the people that want to do the right thing. Yep. But and notice I didn't say Republican, Democrat, because it's on both sides.
Just
You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I'm just trying to, get people educated and get them aware. Mm-hmm. And I had a chance to talk to Jason Miller, who's Trump's personal advisor. A while back, Harry Lake invited me to a party after the Trump rally. And I said, I said to Jason, I said, President Trump did, of all the things he did, mm-hmm. the Supreme Court appointments, what he did with regulation and taxes, foreign policy, what he did with Israel and Jerusalem, how he should have won 3 Nobel Prizes for the peace accords that he brokered in the Middle East. I mean, that was off the charts, unbelievable how that worked. Of all the great things he did, right? Mm-hmm. To me, the biggest thing he did was use the word swamp and expose people to what's really going on in Washington, okay, and in our government, mm-hmm. and in our corporations, right?
Right.
But I said, he now has to take it to the next level. I said to Jason, I said, I hope he starts talking about the globalist Marxist attack on our country.
Yes. And ironically, he is starting to. So.
And he's starting to. So I'm going to take credit for that, okay?
I think you should. I think you absolutely should. Definitely.
Anyway, I'll stop there, but we're just trying to get people educated. We're trying to bring people on like you who have a point of view, and sometimes hearing it from different people and what your thoughts and how you came to your realizations are. But I always said this, when I ran for Congress, they said, well, how are you going to decide how to vote? I said, look, I'm going to look at 3 things. Mm-hmm. And not in this order. I'm going to listen to you because I'm your representative. I'm going to consult the Constitution, because if it's not constitutional, I'm not voting for it.
Yep.
Which means I would never vote for a budget. Okay, never. Okay. And I don't care who's president. And 3, my Lord, Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Right? Now, people don't realize the Constitution was founded on Christianity. Okay. So I know Jesus and the Constitution could be in concert, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't have to worry about that, right? But I said that. And then the other question I would get is, how do we know we can trust you? Mm. And here's my answer. Why the hell would you trust a politician?
That's a great answer. That's a great answer. It is.
You want a guarantee? Mm-hmm. Go to Home Depot and buy a refrigerator. They'll give you a guarantee. Okay, I'm not gonna give you a guarantee. I'm as corruptible as you are.
Sure.
How can I even trust you? Mm-hmm. Okay. And I said, that's the problem. We're putting our faith in these politicians. Mm-hmm. Your job is to be informed, and your job is to hold me accountable. Now, I will do what I can to earn your trust, but please don't. I don't want you to trust me. Okay. Right. I don't want that. And people would clap. When I heard that question asked to other candidates, they said, well, I don't beat my dog and I don't cheat my wife. And, that's not the answer. Okay. Right. I don't want you to trust me.
You don't use double speak and word salads and answer questions with, a non-answer. You don't do any of those things. How
very
strange
direct.
And novel.
I'm very direct. And it's a curse and a blessing, by the way, at the same time. but and so that's the problem, that we are not taking the time to be informed. To your point earlier, and we have this internet now. On my phone, I have more information I can get on that phone.
Touch of a button. You don't even have to. You can speak into your phone. You don't even have to tap anything. You just speak into it and ask it a question. You can get any answer.
Right. Now the problem is that we have so much information at our fingertips. Mm-hmm. But I think today we are probably the least informed.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. Yeah, we're in a society now that's conditioned to getting our news from memes and sound bites and quick, under 7 seconds. I think the attention span for like a news article.
Yeah.
It's scary. And then you add the next layer of that, of course, is the wealth of manipulated or misinformation that you can get from these search engines that are heavily not influenced, run by biased people. So, I mean, the whole Google AI fiasco when George Washington was coming up as a black man, and, all of these crazy things because, humans are inputting the information for them to access. So, they just had Google caught him suppressing Donald Trump in the search results. And they had to rectify that. Like, oops, we didn't know that was happening. Big crock of what. But that's the thing. You need people who are educated, who are aware, who are paying attention. And yes, absolutely, it's exhausting. It's truly exhausting. But when you look at what's actually at stake here, if you have kids and grandkids and just simply are a caring human being who want a safe, better world for ourselves and our children and our grandchildren and their children, you have to know what's going on. So yeah, I just had my soapbox moment. Get aware.
No, that's good. That's good, because I think it takes a lot of work to do that, to do what you just said. But it's your job as a citizen. It's your job, and it's your obligation, right? Yeah. And the tyrants are counting on us being lazy.
Right.
They're counting on that. Okay. Right. And along with dumbing down, and then of course, when you overburden people with taxes, force people to work multiple jobs, you're just exhausting everybody. Nobody has time to do this, and it does take a lot of work, as you know, and
yes,
and it's not easy, and so, and then the ability to be able to discern what you're reading is a whole nother avenue for another day, right? But that's a big deal too, and so first thing I do, by the way, when I read an article, is I find out who the author is, and I do research on the author, and I try to understand. Yeah, I try to understand. Well, what's the bent of this person? What are they saying? What are they, that kind of thing. And that's the first thing I do. Not to say I won't continue to read the article, but then I'll have a little bit of a framework or where the person's coming from.
Well, yeah. Now, when I research a topic that we'll be talking about on the podcast, or just simply that I want to talk about or learn more about, and I'm always amazed by it that, you could take this very same topic, headline, whatever you want to call it, plug it in and read two different articles from two, that are supposed to be journalistic. And the perspectives on them are so polar opposite that it actually kind of like makes your head spin a little bit. Where can we can someone, I make this plea probably on a monthly basis, can someone just give us the facts? Just tell me the story of what actually happened, what was actually said. I don't want to know your opinion of it or you know what I mean? That's, I think, is what is exhausting for people like me, people even less interested and involved in me, who maybe might want to get a little bit more information on things like, who do you believe? What do you listen to? Because you're getting so many different stories about the same thing. It's crazy. It's like that whole saying, there's two sides, and somewhere in there are three sides, his, hers, somewhere in the middle is the truth, right?
Well, let me give you a statistic, okay? And you tell me if this is false, right? 100% of all fatal auto accidents last year, involved cars with black tires. So don't drive a car with black tires.
Right. Simple.
So one of the things we miss in critical thinking, and it's not being taught in schools, is the whole idea of causation and correlation. Okay. So I correlated all these accidents with black tires, but there's no causation. Okay. And so I know somebody probably going to write into you and say there is, but
I'm sure they will. It's
but you see what I'm saying? All prisoners on death row had milk as a child, so don't feed your kids milk, right? So, and so people look at data like that and they accept it. Like if I said to you, people who eat yogurt live 5 years longer than people who don't. Or we're not talking about is the people who eat yogurt probably don't drink, they exercise, they do all that, but that's not of the equation, okay? So I could be 500 pounds, and if I eat yogurt, I'm going to live another 5 years.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so, see what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah, it's a matter of, I think the thing that needs to be taught, which of course they're not going to teach in the schools, is critical thinking. Right. To ask all the external questions, not just, if somebody says Donald Trump is a racist, and they just go, Donald Trump is they just repeat it. So instead they need to be taught to say, well, Why? Can you give me instances where he was a racist? And by the way, they need to be credible. You know, it can't be my brother's sister's cousin's best friend said that he heard someone say it, you know, because that's usually the gist of it. You know, it's just some
that's credible.
third,
That's
fourth,
credible.
fifth hand thing. So yeah, critical thinking, man. Oof.
Well, you also got to remember too that what you don't say is a lie too. If it's not, if it's gonna paint the picture the wrong way, you know,
Right.
and you know, we all have confirmation bias, we all do. But you know, being able to really critically think about something and take a position on it, but not just, as you said, don't just read the headlines.
Right.
You know, Lord, don't do that. You know,
Don't
that's
do
why
that.
it really upsets me when these people say, "How can we trust you?" Don't trust the government. My God.
Right. Didn't Ronald Reagan say
much-
the best?
I think you all know that I've always felt the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help."
Yeah, trust but verify. Yes. But you know, as much as I love President Trump, I've been critical of some of the things he did. Okay.
Absolutely, and rightly so. You know, we should
I'll give
always
you an
be.
example because he raised tariffs on China. That is not the president's job. That's in Article 1, Section 8. The Congress can only establish tariffs. Okay. So I don't like the fact he did that, even though I do like the fact that tariffs got raised for China.
Right.
Be careful what you like, because if you pick and choose the violations of the Constitution, if you pick and choose what you like, you'll rue the day someday that they're going to do something that's not constitutional that you don't like. Okay.
Yes.
And so that's why I'm really clear on that as a doctrine. You know, every decision, every political question I get asked, the first thing I think about is that, how is it in concert with the Constitution? Okay. And so I don't care if you like the idea or not, like tuition reimbursement. You could love it, right? You could say, "Oh my God, this is the right thing to do," and really believe that. But the president can't spend money. That's Congress's job.
Right.
Number one. Number two, transferring money from A to B is unconstitutional, even though we do it all the time. And the thing about that too is when the government takes your money and gives it to somebody else, and the founders were very clear, the federal government was not for charity. Okay.
Right.
But the General Welfare Clause, I got an episode on that. They got all miscombobulated in the courts. But anyway, if they take money from you and give it to somebody else, the government owns you both.
Right. Right.
And that's what they want. They want control. They want control.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is ultimately, I mean, that's like that sums it up perfectly. Like, this is what everything is really about. This isn't about, I don't, you know, maybe it goes back as far back as when the Constitution was written, because that was when they were actually thinking about for the people.
Right.
You know, so I don't know that the moment in time, if there was, I don't think it was a specific moment, but obviously there was a moment in time where that shifted and it became, right, like it slowly probably just morphed into power, control, money, you know, all of those things. You know, absolute power absolutely corrupts, right? We all know that, and yet we forget that that's the case, and obviously we're dealing with a government that has way too much power and control, and is making way too much money in the jobs that they're doing. So none of it makes any sense, and really shame on us for not holding them accountable. And I love that you tell your constituents, like, hold me accountable. Don't just blindly trust me. That's absurd, because I'm a nice guy. I say nice things to you. You know, no, absolutely not. So,
well, you know, if you want a period of time to answer your question, I would focus on from 1913 up, especially in the early part of the 20th century, is where a lot of the transgressions happened, including the court cases that redefine what this General Welfare Clause is all about. Okay, the General Welfare Clause, it's clear if you read the Federalist Papers and everything else, the founders meant that to be for the good of the nation, not the good for Mark Deluzio individually or Elsa or a company or anything, right? That's what it meant. It got misconstrued in the courts. And so that basically makes Article 1, Section 8, which is the enumerated powers of Congress, okay, of what they can do and write legislation around. It makes that almost null and void, because now anybody who thinks we should spend money, anybody being a congressman, let's say, on a cause should be okay because of the way the courts interpreted the General Welfare Clause in the Constitution. And this is why we can now spend, not we can, but we do spend money on things like Planned Parenthood.
Mm,
And $500 million a year. We give them $500 million of our taxpayer money a year.
it's insane.
That is, and whether or not you're for abortion or not, it doesn't matter. Okay.
Right.
That is an unconstitutional spend.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you got to remember the Federalist Papers were editorial letters written by Hamilton and Madison and John Jay, okay, to New York newspapers. New York was the holdout. They didn't trust, and it's kind of ironic to think about it today, the way New York is positioned. But New York was very skeptical of an overreaching federal government, and they didn't want to sign on to the Constitution. If we didn't get New York, we wouldn't have ratified the Constitution. Okay, so these three guys wrote these articles to newspapers to convince them that we're going to be a limited government. It's kind of funny, Hamilton was part of that, but Madison was a small government guy, and John Jay was too. But they wrote these articles to the New York newspapers to convince, because again, no internet back then and all that, to convince New York to sign on to the Constitution. Okay, all right, and those articles, those letters, became what's now known as the Federalist Papers. Okay, so you want to really get an understanding, of the Constitution, because the Constitution is only 4,500 words. That's all it is.
It's so crazy.
It's in a little book,
Yeah.
But if you go in any one of those things you want to talk about, and you go to the Federalist Papers, you really get the meaning of what the founders were talking about.
That's awesome.
Okay, and we have just unbelievably stomped on our rights by stomping on the Constitution. So that's why we call our podcast The Constitution Solution, one podcast under God, because we truly believe if we truly followed the founders' vision of the Constitution, most of our problems would go away. Most of them would. Okay? And but we're not doing that right now, and that's where we're missing everybody, understanding what really is going on here. And the funny thing about it is, everybody thinks, well, we're going to put President Trump in place, which I hope we do, and he'll fix all this. No, he won't. He might delay it, but there is such a underlying machine on a global basis trying to uncover uproot our way of life. That it's unbelievably massive. And I'm afraid I don't even know, and I've done a lot of studying on this. There's so much I know. I'm not stupid enough to know that I know it all. I know there's so much going on under the covers that nobody has an idea of. Okay. Yeah. Nobody. And that's what really scares me. Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And we are so, in China, I didn't talk about that, but we are so vulnerable to China right now. They at a switch, they can shut us down.
Yeah.
And I won't go into the details on that, but I've been asked to be in a think tank in Washington.
That's for another visit. That's for another visit, right?
We've got a whole thing on China, but let me tell you, it is scary how vulnerable we are and how we let ourselves get into that position.
Yeah, so. Yeah. This is where people like you and I and people like us lean very, very heavily also at this time on our faith and our trust in God that He is in control. And, whatever is going to happen, He's going to make things all right. But boy, oh boy, it's scary to live it and to watch it happening and feel like you are on a train with no brakes. That's basically what it feels like. I feel like we're just, headed towards an epic derailment, and it's scary.
Adam said that our Constitution will not work without a religious and moral people. Okay, so good luck with that now, right? But I still believe, though, what you just said. I still believe that Jesus is gonna He'll take care of us. Okay, I mean, let's face it. He brought us here to where we are with this great country, and we are a great country. I've been to 45 countries. I've seen the underbelly of this world, and every time I come home, I want to kiss the ground. And I try to teach that to my kids, because the town they grew up in, let's just call it Niceville for a minute, so we don't reveal where we live or lived. I lived, right. But we went out to Disneyland one year when they were kids, and I hate Disney, by the way, and not because of the political things with it. I just hate Disney for a lot of different reasons, and I don't think it's a mouse. I think it's a rat. But anyway, but we went to Disneyland and then went down to San Diego and went to the zoo and did all that stuff. And got up, and Steven, the guy, my little guy that got killed, he says, "Dad, what are you going to do today?" I said, "We're going to go to Tijuana." "What's that?" "It's about half an hour down the road from San Diego." I said, and I've been there a million times. I said, "I'm going to show you what a third world country is." "What's a third world country, Dad?" And I took him down there, and as you said, little 4-year-old kids begging for money with no shoes,
Yeah.
walking on, and walking on stones, and mother all drugged out, and they got to see that, right? And I want them to see that. And Scott actually writes about it in his book that he remembered that. And I said, guys, you think Disneyland is Fantasyland? No, Niceville, where you live, is Fantasyland. Okay,
Yeah, that's so
nobody
true.
in the world on a percentage basis lives like you do. You don't get it. This is not normal where you live.
Yeah.
Anywhere in America, for that matter, this is
Right.
not normal. The squalor I saw, Elsa, in this world, I still think about it, and it just makes me want to vomit.
Yeah. Yeah,
And all that
it's
squalor is-
unimaginable for most of us.
It is unimaginable. That's why people have got to travel. And when I say travel, don't go to Paris.
Right.
Yeah, go to Paris. It's a nice city. I love London, right?
Mhm.
Go somewhere that they don't speak English, and go somewhere. Don't go to Australia. I love Australia. They're great people, but
Right.
it's so much like here. Okay.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, when I was in the Outback, I looking at it, I was saying, geez, I think I'm in Arizona, because of
It's
the
wild.
desert, But go to India.
Mhm.
And I love India. I have a client over there. I have friends over there, and they're great people. Okay. But go to India. Go to China, but don't stay in Shanghai. Go out to the outskirts. Go to these places to see what the real world is dealing with. Okay. And you'll come back, and when you get off the plane, you're going to kiss the ground.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But we don't
Absolutely.
get how good we have it. Most people don't get what we have, and the risk that the founders took to do what they did. Their honor, their sacred honor, their wealth, and their lives they pledged. They signed a death warrant when they signed the Declaration. And all these people, they're a bunch of old white men. Well, first of all, Jefferson was 31 when he wrote the Declaration. So I just look at this and say we are so ill-informed about how good we have it. And the people that really put their ass on the line. I had a meeting once with Phil Graham from Texas and Patrick Toomey. I was at a political conference out in Latrobe, a fundraiser, and I was having dinner with him. And Phil Graham gets up and he pontificates all his, what he thinks is going on. And we had two veterans at the table. One guy was a Marine. He flew in the Korean War, and another guy was in the Army. And I said, I'd like to make a toast to John and Willie, the two veterans at this table. There are about 20 of us, right? I said, let's understand, it is not the politician who brings us our freedoms. It's guys like John and Willie who do.
Yes.
And Phil Graham did not like that. He did not like
too
that.
bad.
Yeah, exactly. Too bad.
Yeah, too bad.
And so when I look at a real hero, and I think I gave you my poem on heroes,
Yes.
to me, heroes are people like your husband, who's not only a military veteran, but he's also a law enforcement officer. The people who put their ass on the line, okay, to protect others.
Yeah, there's nothing like that. There's nothing that compares to that, really, absolutely. And for your son who gave his life, for your other son who, lives the aftermath of that, with your whole family, to experience that kind of loss. And, and it's great to have that knowledge and understanding that, he died in service for his country, for what he believed in, what your whole family believes in, but it doesn't bring him back, so you have that, and that's tremendous. And so, when you see, I think probably for families like yours, and to a slightly lesser degree ours, when you know those things, when you know the people who have sacrificed, and who continue to do so on a regular basis, you have a different respect, you have a different understanding, different perspective. And anyone who has never had that kind of perspective, honestly, is someone it's not that I can't take them seriously, it's that I can't take them seriously when they complain. I think that's really what it is. When you complain about this country, and how you're so angry that the new iPhone whatever isn't out yet, and the injustice, the absurdity, and calling people heroes and brave who just I don't know, put on a dress or something. Those are the kind of things I have a problem with. Like if we want to go down the line of what's brave and what's heroic, that's not going to be on my list, but
when your better half, whether your husband, your wife, your son, your daughter, your father, your mother, when they leave the home and you don't know if they're coming back,
right?
Firefighters, police,
Mhm.
military. Okay, that maybe is a very good litmus test as to whether or not they're heroes. As a kid, I used to idolize the Boston. I'm a Boston Red Sox.
Mhm.
Carl Yastrzemski. He was my hero.
Mhm.
Well, in all due respect to Carl, and I have his signed bat up on my wall over here. He's not a hero. Okay.
Right. Right.
People call me a hero. Oh, you're a hero. No, I'm not. I didn't don the uniform.
Right.
Yeah, I raised two
Yeah, we
kids.
categorize differently. We
Yeah,
offer
I have a very
respect and
clear.
gratitude.
Yeah, and people can argue with me about it all they want. That's fine because they can have their
Sure.
definitions of a hero. But my hero is what I just said. And
Yeah.
now the only thing I'll say about Stephen, who passed away,
Mhm.
is probably my one failing as a father is that I'm a Boston Red Sox fan, and somehow he grew up to be a Yankee fan. Okay,
What?
so yeah. So I
Oh
know.
my goodness.
I hate to admit that publicly, but
Yeah.
it's funny, for his not funny, but I actually got to Bernie Williams, who used to play right field for the Yankees, and Stephen loved Bernie Williams. He's a classical guitarist, and I had him already set up to play at his wedding.
Wow. Really? Oh my goodness.
But he
Oh.
didn't know about it.
Oh,
So,
okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So it was gonna be a surprise,
Mhm.
and but I had to call him and say, no, sorry, he's not gonna be there. So but,
You're a part of a select group of people that honestly no one wants to be a part of, right? No one wants to be a part of that group, and there is certainly honor in all the gratitude and all of the things. But as we said before, it doesn't bring back your loved one. It's tragic and sad. And at the very least, you get that gratitude and understanding from people who know, from people who get
Right.
it, who value that. And thank goodness, because, unfortunately there's a frighteningly large amount of people, or it seems to be, in the world that have lost perspective on all of that. But I'll bring it around town and bring it back to again. I'll say I'm so grateful to you and people like you who are standing up and speaking out and saying the things and sharing. Like most importantly, sharing the information and the knowledge base that you have. It's just tremendous, and I do believe that it makes a difference. That it is making a difference. One person is going to watch this show. I'd like to believe it's going to be a lot more than that. One person besides me, because I'm a given, are going to go and watch those episodes, and they're going to educate themselves and learn things that they didn't know, and then they're going to share that knowledge with people that they know, and that ripple effect. It matters. It's huge. It really is. So I thank you, and I hope you're going to come back on many, many times to share all of the things.
We just scratched the surface. Really, there's so much to talk about, and but I really believe things happen for a reason.
Mhm.
I believe in a really weird way, and this may sound really weird, losing Stephen was meant to be,
Mhm.
and a lot of things favorable, good happened
Mhm.
since he died. I opened up a outreach program for veterans to start businesses. I've helped a lot of veterans. And one veteran told me, she said, I'd be in a gutter right now if it wasn't for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
God gave me and you
Mhm.
gifts.
Yes.
You have gifts, and those gifts are on loan. They're not mine.
Right.
And if I don't use those gifts to help others,
Mhm.
then that to me is a sin.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. Faithful stewards of God's graces. Absolutely.
Yep.
And I agree with you 100%. I believe that is our job and our purpose and our mission. And I believe wholeheartedly that, that he does work all things for the good of those who love him. And that doesn't mean the bad things aren't going to happen to us. We're all a testament to that, some more than others, that, the bad things are going to happen no matter what. So it's what you do with the bad things that happen to you that are going to matter the most. And, everything you just said is just testament to that. And boy, oh boy, I wouldn't call us lucky. I would just call us blessed. I would say that we're very blessed to be able to have these platforms, and that was a huge part of when my stuff started taking off and I started getting more followers. And that was the big question. Like, so what's my purpose? Like, what's the point? Why am I getting this? Because I don't think I deserve to have this kind of reach and platform any more than anyone else does. So what's the purpose? And the purpose is to serve. So, and to spread the word. Right.
And you were doing that. And you're doing a great job at it as well. And, that's kind of how I look at the world. And there's all a reason for this. And, And sometimes I think the grief, we're all going to have grief. And I don't try to compare my grief against anybody else's grief. I remember losing my dog in 4th grade. Oh my God, I cried for 3 days in school. But, you know, I don't want to compare my grief with anybody's grief, because we're all going to have grief. You know, and I have a poem called The Grief Monster, right? And how we kick his ass. We still kick his ass through life. We've always won, you know. And I think sometimes the grief that God introduces us to is a test in a lot of ways. And it's also a way not only to test us, but to compel us to grow.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, one of my favorite quotes, and it's attributed to a few different people, one of them being Churchill. I don't know who the originator of this quote is, so I just stick with Churchill. But the quote is that the price we pay for love is grief. And the first time I heard that, it just like knife right through my heart, because the price is worth it. Like, you get great love, and so the price is worth it. So I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade. And I would hope that no one would trade the love that they get in their lives, whether it's from their children or their spouses or family members or friends, whatever the case is. Great love is so worth the grief that we feel when we have loss. So I hope that helps somebody else who's grieving.
Yep, we all are.
Yeah.
It's inescapable. You can't get away from it. It's a human condition. But then again, it's like, okay, well, what do you do with that?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, so it's what you do. Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Oh my goodness, my friends. On that note, we're gonna call it. And you already heard me ask him. You already heard me beg him to come back again, and he said yes. I'm saying that you said yes. I'm not even sure if you said yes, but.
Oh, I said yes. Okay. There's so much we could talk about. So, yeah, I love your show. I love your partner there. I listen to your podcast and episodes, and they are they're fun to listen to and educational. And you know, I think keep doing what you're doing. You know?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it so much, and I'll be on with you. Is that next week? I think it's next week. I think, right?
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I'm so excited.
Quiz you on all the stuff I gave you today. So give me a quiz.
That's so nervous. Oh my goodness, my friend Mark, thank you so much. I look forward to our dinner when you come back this way for a visit, and I will talk to you next week, and I'll see the rest of you. I see y'all every day, or you see me every day, so we'll catch you in the next one.
Okay, Elsa, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Take care.
You bet.